Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our podcast. This is iCompete, Building Your Empire with John Hewitt, live from the castle. Hi, I'm Alberto. I'm John Hewitt's producer. You might be asking, who is John Hewitt? Well, he is the Hewitt in Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you want to find out more about John Hewitt and what he's currently doing, go to loyaltybrands.com. That's loyaltybrands.com, or find John T. Hewitt on LinkedIn or Facebook. John Hewitt's made over 1,000 millionaires, and you could be the next one. Here is your host, John Hewitt.
Thank you, Roberta. I'd like to invite my special guest. He's the CEO of ATAX. And Alberto, would you tell people your experience in the income tax industry?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, John. My background is with H&R Block. So I started with H&R Block in 2010 as a district general manager and was able to run 25 locations, moved to be a regional director in South Florida, overseeing over 250 locations, and got tapped in the shoulder to lead the Latino program for H&R Block and their Kansas City and headquarters, overseeing their 2,700 locations, their Latino designated offices that they had across the nation several years ago.
Well, and what did you do before you went to Block? You said you went to Block in 2010, started as a district manager. What did you do before that?
So I studied psychology back in Puerto Rico. So that's my background. After studying psychology, I moved to Florida, and I spent almost 10 years with Radio Shack. And that's where I got into retail sales with the Shack.
Now, is Radio Shack still in business?
They are not. So definitely a legacy in the retail industry.
So they were lost after you left.
Yeah, but they're definitely a great company where I loved shopping there when I was a kid with my dad, and they taught me a lot of great basics on retail and sales. So I had like a lot of great memories in Radio Shack.
Well, how does a psychology major become an employee of Radio Shack? They don't seem to go together.
Yeah, so when I moved to Florida, I was fully bilingual, looking to get into the workforce, and actually, my first day with Radio Shack was on 9/11, so it was definitely a memorable experience. And never had worked for retail, never had liked retail, just on the negative connotation of sales. But very easily, I started understanding that clients had a need, and I just asked them questions, and I was able to provide them a solution with either a resistor or a cell phone or anything that they sold in the store. And very quickly, I found a nice groove and nice building relationships with the guest, and then just kind of piqued my interest in continuing to kind of growing with that company.
When you peaked there, what was your responsibility?
So I was a district manager. I had moved to several parts of Central Florida, overseeing 20, 25 locations, and wanted to become a regional director, wanted to continue growing in the company. And at that point, they were going through a lot of transitioning. So that's where I started seeing an opportunity to continue on that director role, that growth that I wanted to continue on. And then that's when, through referrals, I was able to find someone recommended, hey, why don't you go work for H&R Block? And the same thing. I'm like, now I'm a psychology person that went to retail and now doing taxes. But what I loved was the product was different, but it was the same skill set and the same ability to work with people, help find a solution in a different environment.
So essentially your career is divided almost in half with Radio Shack and half of the income tax business.
Correct.
And which do you like better?
I love the taxes. To me, it's number one, it's a business. What I was looking for after Radio Shack, I wanted something that that I can build a career. And immediately the draw to the tax world was everyone has to file their taxes. And I wasn't selling something that was a commodity. I was selling something that was ever changing, something that was complex, that had training, but also had growth in sales. So I love that whole aspect of it on the taxation world. And so that really kind of piqued my interest and continue my evolution, my growth in my career.
Now, you already referred to death and taxes and the beauty of the tax preparation industry. Also, how recession resistant is the tax industry?
Yes, absolutely. And the every year, especially when we go through difficult times in the U.S., folks might stop purchasing their cup of coffee and special occasions, but taxes, and that was one thing that kind of drew me into there, where everyone has to file their taxes every year. So regardless of if the recession is going great or if things are going poor, then it's a necessity that clients have to file. But what I also found early in the days is that a lot of people were filing, but not everyone was truly maximizing or getting that expertise. So I really found an opportunity where, from an education, educating the team that I led, educating the community, and then providing a service that everyone needed, regardless of if it was a great year or a struggle year, they still needed that help from someone.
Well, I've been in the tax industry for 52 years. Guess how many years did the tax laws have changed out of 52 years?
I'm assuming the majority.
Even more than the majority.
Yeah.
For 52 years, they've changed 52 times. And guess how many times they're going to change in the next 52 years?
Yeah, 52 more times. And
right.
Even this past season where we had several changes in 1 year. So it's the beauty of it. I remember my first year in H&R Block, I had this amazing tax professional that had been, at that point, had been almost 30 years in the industry. Her name is Lorraine, and loved her to death. And I asked Lorraine, I said, how explain to me, how can you do this for 30 years and not get bored? And what she said, and it really made a big difference to me and building that career, was, Alberto, every year it's different. It's like every year I got to keep my mind sharp. Every year the world adds complexity to consumers' lives, and it's my job to help them answer those questions. And that to me was, wow, this is the career that I was looking for after the Radio Shack days.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest three reasons people pick a tax preparer instead of doing it themselves is it changes every year. And it already started out complex. Do you remember the 1040EZ?
Mm-hmm.
And remember how many pages there were in a 1040EZ?
Yeah, simple form, 1 or 2 pages, yeah.
Right. And guess how many pages of instructions the last year they had the 1040EZ?
Yeah, was it 8 or 10 pages, multiple pages?
Actually, 27 pages. And in the instructions, it said the average person is going to spend 2 hours reading the instructions in order to do the simplest form. And you had to meet several requirements. You had to be single. You had to live in the same house or same address you had the year before. So only a few people qualified, but it said that it was going to take you two hours to learn to prepare that form, even using a computer. And even if you get it right, then it's going to change the next year. It changes each and every year. So a great advantage of tax preparation. Anything else that comes to mind why the tax industry is special?
Well, the other piece is, and this goes back to the relationship piece, is the relationships that the tax professionals, the franchisees build with their clients. Like, and not only they are living, they're playing, but they're truly part of their community. And this is a very personal, but it is one of the biggest transactions, financial transactions for many consumers in the year. So to be able to really help them with that complexity in one of their biggest transactions, and at the same time be that person that is building true relationship. I've seen that throughout the last 15 years, where be able to see folks seeing not only helping the one person, but now they're helping their kids and they're helping their grandkids. So that is really amazing to see.
In a way, does psychology play into tax preparation?
Every day, you gotta listen to cues. You gotta ask questions, right, to find out, because to your point, things change every year. So your life might be the same, but then a tax law might have changed. So now it's like during conversations, you're like, oh yeah, me and my wife just bought a house. There might be something there. So you really have to kind of have a lot of great conversations to be able to extract that information and then truly help the client. And every year that information might be different, but every year, even if it's the same information, then the tax law might be different.
So one of the things that's different about tax preparation than other industries is you have to deal with the IRS. Mm-hmm. And so do you think that's an advantage or disadvantage to a tax preparer, to an ATAX franchise, to a tax preparer? Do you think it's an advantage or disadvantage having to deal with the IRS?
Well, for us, it's a huge advantage, because not only it's complex, but no one wants to mess with the IRS. So it's definitely an advantage for the ATAX franchisee.
In my career, thousands of people have told me that they were afraid of the IRS. Guess how many people, Alberto, told me that they were afraid of the CIA or FBI?
Very few or none.
None, exactly. So people, I say thank you, IRS. They are, that fear of the IRS drives people to have someone prepare their return. Some customers, as you know, they'll do their own return. They'll do it on a computer. They'll come in and just pay us to check it and do it and sign it, because they want someone standing between them and the IRS. That doesn't happen in a lot of industries.
And it creates that confidence. And to your point, again, the software might be easier for the consumer, but it's still that I don't want to hit submit. I don't want to hit send. It's like, okay, I think I'm done, but now you take it over. It's your responsibility. And it's like, yeah, let me check it. And then sometimes we find other things, and sometimes we just give them that peace of mind of like, yep, we have you. It's okay. We will help you with this piece.
One of the things that I find that separates great tax preparation from ordinary tax preparation is typically an ordinary preparer, whatever company they're at, or independent, they're just a mom and pop, or they work for one of the tax companies. The things that to me is a differentiator between a great preparer and an ordinary preparer is digging for deductions. And I think you referred to that as one of the best, the best, most satisfactory thing is not only pleasing a customer and doing a good job for them and making it not like going to the dentist, but making it a pleasant experience, but is asking the questions to make sure they haven't missed everything, because people don't know everything that's deductible. In the years, have you become a tax expert yet?
I have areas of expertise where I definitely have learned from the amazing people around me. But the benefit is I have amazing tax professionals and franchisees around me that I let them be the expert.
So if I ask you for some commonly missed deductions, I should probably answer that myself?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, my dad and I built tax software for an Apple computer in 1981, the first tax software for an Apple computer, and the language has changed a number of times, but still the basic program is there. And the philosophy was to have a decision tree software that made the first year taxpayer as good as a 20-year taxpayer. So, for example, it was all question and answer. Instead of saying, what were your contributions, which is a very bland, typical way that a average or below average preparer might say. It would say, did you drive any mileage for teaching Sunday school, or were you an officer in any charitable organizations and use your car to go back and forth to meetings? And so that's a commonly missed deduction, that you can deduct mileage to, in certain cases, many cases, to a charitable event. And most consumers don't know it. No, most taxpayers don't know it. So unless the tax preparer digs for that, then they're not going to have that deduction. Another thing, for example, when they had rental property, mileage in a car is very valuable. So if you go and collect rent, if you go rake leaves, if you go paint the house, if you go check on it, all that mileage back and forth from your house to the rental property is a deduction. And most people, they bring in their list of deductions and they don't know those kind of things. And so it's not on their list. And the tax preparers don't take the time to actually dig for deductions and make sure they didn't miss anything. And that's one of the most enjoyable things about the business to me is you get to help people, and helping people is a big motivator for me.
One thing to add, you were talking about like what the great preparers do, and what I've seen is, number one, asking those questions in plain English or in Spanish, but instead of what many consumers wouldn't understand. But what I've always seen is it's like a puzzle, right? And they love the puzzle, and it's trying to find the puzzle pieces, because the tax code is so complex that there's a lot of different ways of finding that maximum deduction. So I think that's right. It's really, again, what I constantly see when I visit our franchisees is them connecting with the client and asking them questions, but they're really digging to find that puzzle to truly help their clients.
Question psychologically for you to answer, but you were a major in that, so maybe it'll be easy. But Waiter Shack went out of business because you left, right?
That was one of the reasons.
Okay, good. Yeah, right. H&R Block didn't go out of business. On the other hand, H&R Block has suffered in the 21st century. They've dropped back 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. They had a market share of about 25%. And today their market share is half of that. They're under 12% market share. So they have to be doing something wrong, because great companies, even great companies like Amazon and Apple and those companies increase market share, and for decades. If you could give advice to the H&R Block CEO, do you have advice that you would give him to help him improve? And by the way, he may be listening, so maybe he'll send you a check if you have a good suggestion.
Good advice. Yeah. So I think the one thing that I have loved and learned from you is that what I've experienced in decision making from the leadership team and those companies is a lot of those decisions many times come from the top down. And you always preach that we listen to our franchisees, which means that decisions are basically being made from the ground up. And a lot of times it's the simple decisions that I remember when I joined H&R Block, the first town hall that I had. So they kind of grabbed after tax season, they brought all the tax pros, and then we talked and about next year, and probably 3 or 4 tax professionals that numbers wise, they were really good. They had been there for many years, and they said, I want my clock. And I was like, what is the clock? I didn't understand it. And the clock was basically a tenure recognition that after X amount of years, then clock in the days used to give their employees like the ground up, and they loved it. It was a simple clock, but they loved it, and they got rid of it. And I didn't understand why. I'm assuming it was a financial decision, but those are the things that these folks that pour in their soul, that for in their words, they bleed it green. At that point, they took the clock away. So I think the biggest advice that I always remind myself, and it's always a constant battle when you grow up in companies like the That is, are you listening to your people? Are you asking questions? And then always making sure that you're making decisions from the ground up from your team, because many times they will actually come up with great ideas ideas that will become great, and they can be validated, and it comes from them. So that's my biggest learning, John, that I definitely have seen. And it's something that I have written down that I look at every morning is, are you listening to your team? Are you listening to your franchisees?
So that's your advice, is go listen to the people on the ground, the people that deal with customers. Anything else?
That is my one biggest advice.
And I feel like saying thank you, H&R Block, about every day, but it's certainly every week. And one of the great things they've done for me as a competitor is they've changed CEOs about 10 times in the 21st century. So each time, guess what happens? Guess how many of the 10 CEOs have come in with new ideas?
I'm sure every single 10.
Exactly. So they all have new ideas. And in the meantime, they don't take the time to understand what's worked in the past. And so sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you need to understand it. In what I've seen is that I call it CEO disease, because I've seen the same thing happen at our other competitors. As they get all these new CEOs, the first thing I would do is I would go and sit with all of the largest franchises and say, tell us how to improve. Tell us how to improve our tech school. Tell us how to improve our technical support. Tell us how to improve our marketing. Tell us how to improve. And I would listen, and I would find out what was working well and what needed improvement on. And that's the easiest way to improve. When you go into an entirely new industry, and by the way, every H&R Block CEO came from another industry. Not one came from the tax industry. And they would come from another industry, and they'd have ideas. It's like the board of directors, they would hire the person with the best ideas. And of course, some of the best ideas, virtually every idea, had been tried and failed. And that's why they weren't being utilized. So let's talk about H&R Block, great company. Till recently, they're a Fortune 500 company. They're a household name. They're a 900-pound gorilla. They have billions of dollars in the bank. They've been extremely successful, but yet vulnerable. They halved their business. They only have a less than a 12% market share. And so one of the things that we didn't mention earlier about the things that are great about this industry, it's very fragmented. All of the four largest preparers, ATAX and Liberty and Jackson Hewitt and Block, we have less than a 20% market share. So more than 80% of the business is done by mom and pops. In industry after industry, the national companies that put the mom and pops under. If you look at grocery chains, if you look at department stores, if you look at virtually every industry, they've fast food, they've put the mom and pops out of business. And so when we think of competing, when we go into a market, pretend H&R Block is doing 1,200 returns. Well, they have less than a 12% market share. That means there's 10,000 returns around that H&R Block that are going to another preparer. And so people think, how are you going to compete with Block? But really, we take business from mom and pops. It's just the same as kind of McDonald's and Burger King. McDonald's spends $30,000. They do a demographic study. They find a location. And Alberto, do you know how much Burger King spends to find a location?
Oh, I'm assuming, do they just find the nearest McDonald's?
Exactly. They go right across the street. They pay nothing. They pay nothing because they know where to go. And if H&R Block didn't exist, we would have to do demographic studies and find out where to go. But there's 9,000 H&R Blocks in this country. And to me, whenever there's not an ATAX yet, there's a vacancy sign waiting for us to come and compete. Just like when Burger King sees a McDonald's flourishing, they go as quick as they can to put a location next to them, and they don't go to the other side of town. They just get in in McDonald's face. And actually, McDonald's business continues to rise. Burger King doesn't put the hurt on McDonald's. McDonald's grows with Burger King there. But Burger King takes business from the mom and pops. We only have a few minutes left. Differentiators. What's different about ATAX than you have to have differentiators, right? You have to have something that would make a customer come to you versus it might be a Big Mac, but you have to have something different. What does ATAX do differently?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, and you talked about the fragmented segment, and one of the populations that continues to grow in the U.S. is the Hispanic market, and this is across the entire United States. And these are segments that has lots of buying power, and it's hard to understand. And that's a segment that we understand that consumer, and we're going after that consumer, that multicultural clients who truly authentically serve them in that local community. And that's what the mom and pops are doing great. That's a great opportunity, especially with the growth of immigration. That's a great growth opportunity for many new ATAX and current franchisees. But we also, not only we are retail tax format, but we also have business services and the traditional bookkeeping and payroll. But we have a system for our franchisees to follow, like our ATAX Eagle. And that's a big differentiator where you'll be able to identify the Eagle within your local community. So when folks are driving by, then they're auto-associating, oh, I just saw the Eagle online or in person or the waiver, and then be able to find your nearest ATAX office. So there's definitely some key differentiators that we have in our industry to help our franchisees grow and provide that legendary service that we want to deliver to our clients.
And we have about 40 seconds. What's our mission at ATAX?
So our mission is to deliver a legendary service to acquire, retain, and grow clients for the business.
Yeah, it's all about exceeding customers' expectations. With customers, you can't just meet their expectations. You either fail to meet them or you exceed them. And what ATAX is about is exceeding a greater and greater percentage of customers every year. And that's why we're the fastest growing in the country. Thanks for your time, Alberto. It was a great call. Hope to have you on again.
Thank you, John.
Bye now.
Thank you for taking the time to learn about how to build your empire with John Hewitt. Find John on LinkedIn at John T. Hewitt or message John Hewitt on Facebook. This is iCompete, live from the castle, building your empire with John Hewitt. Don't miss new episodes every Monday by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, cpnshows.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, this was iCompete, building your empire with John Hewitt.